And I realised that I needed to find out how you get an injury, but I needed to stop asking other people. And I needed to stop reading the research that they told me to read, and I needed to get a better understanding of what research was all about. So, did we say we've got any PhDs in here? I know a few more people have arrived. No? Oh, good. Relax a bit now. Because the PhDs are the weird ones. Okay, the PhDs are the people that enjoy reading research. They're the ones that spend hours doing it. They can look at a research paper and go, oh, yeah, that's good. Oh no, not me. I have to spend weeks reading research. So I would prefer to have a glass of wine and watch Netflix, Santa Clarita's Diet, than do research. Okay, so that wasn't my happy place at the top of that pyramid. As you can see from everything I've said, my line was pretty much here. And that's okay, because it doesn't matter where your line is, as long as you are consistent with your line. Because consistency builds trust. And I can trust that if I ask my Aunt Mabel anything, it's going to be made up. Okay, Aunt Mabel is going to say, oh, you know what you need for your foot, don't you, Joe? You need to put jam on your knee. It works. How can I argue with it works? It worked on her. But that, I can always, we have a paper in the UK called the Daily Mail. Has anybody heard of the Daily Mail? It's consistently bad. Consistently bad. You can wake up and you can decide whether you want to have cancer or not have cancer. You can decide because on one print it will say eat chocolate, it will prevent cancer, and on the other it will say eat chocolate, it will cause cancer. So you can just pick and choose what you want. So clearly I choose all the positives for chocolate and wine. So this is where I was. Now books. Books are a great thing. You know, I think it's always good to read a book, and sometimes you get a book that has actually got some good evidence and good research behind it. However, it is worth remembering that by the time a book has gone to print, the research is possibly out of date. Also, there is a reason you have a book, and it's for sales. Okay, and if it's for sales, it means it's much more likely to be opinion-led. And the problem with opinion is if you take my opinion, or I take your opinion, we have to work on the level of opinion. And if we're talking opinions, and I say to you, in order to recover from an ACL injury, for my gentleman over there with the ACL injury, what was your name? Tyler. So if you've got your ACL injury, I know this works. This is a good tip. You get a gerbil, and you make it run clockwise around your knee, it gets better. It's happened. It works on me. It works on my clients. Yeah. But that's my opinion. Now, if Tyler comes back to me and says, yeah, but when your gerbil went round your knee, made my grand shoulder hurt. No, it didn't. You go, yes, it did. But I have to take his opinion because we're on the land of opinion. And if your line is opinion, everybody else's opinion is valid. And everybody's opinion is valid, but what we want to do is we want to get that onto a research level. So be careful of the opinions. So be careful of the guru that says 1 minute, I'm quoting my research, blah, 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 blah. But in my opinion, with my client, it worked. Because what they've now done is they've jumped away from research and they've gone into the land of opinion where anything goes. Okay? Blogs. Blogs are a great starting point because you get some really good references to go off into your tangent and your black holes. So that's good. So I had been following people, and a lot of the gurus I had followed had a wiggly line because they would quote from research and then they would quote from opinions and clinical evidence. And clinical evidence is not the same as scientific research. And I don't want to be the one that's experimenting on my clients. And so what I did was I drew a line, and that's my line in the sand. And that was the line that I decided the research had to come up to in order for me to feel comfortable in charging my clients. I don't want to experiment anymore. And the line that I chose was papers, journals that had an impact factor of a 2.5. And at that point before, I hadn't really known what an impact factor was all about, but it's just how many times that journal has been cited. And to get a 2.5, it meant that somebody else was doing the hard work for me and actually filtering out all the papers that had been done on rats or had done on 5 people rather than a study that was done on at least 100 people. So it meant that the research that I was reading was of better quality, because I still like Netflix and I still train my clients, and I don't have that much time to go through all of the pieces of research that I had been playing the firing out game. And so this gave me that opportunity to not have to waste time on those papers that really were just telling me about vermin and rats and stuff which wasn't relevant to my client. So those tips are: make sure that the author is an author that is relevant in the subject that you're researching, make sure that it's a current paper, make sure that it's not done on rats. All of those sort of things will help you filter the research out if, like me, you don't want to spend all of that time on it. But what I realised I was still not quite getting, and it was crucial to the next part of the story, is I wasn't getting my question right. Because now I was taking ownership of the research. If I went in with my bias, I could find research to support anything I wanted to support. And that's really how the Daily Mail works. If you want to go out there and find research to brush your ego and support your bias, you can find it. The key, if you want to help your client, is to remove your bias, which is hard, but is to remove it from the question. So I would say things like, what is the best stretch to make me faster? Which is a really bad question. So, because for a start, faster at what? So, okay, let's spin that down. I want to get, what's the best stretch to help me accelerate in running? So now, the answer can only be stretch. Because that's all I've put in the question. So if I try and remove that, and now I say, what's the best thing to make me faster at running? If it says foam rolling, I'm in. If it says scraping, I'm in. If it says stretching, I'm in. If it says move like you want to move when you're running, go for the opposite knee extensor reflex and the slip reflex, and make sure that you've got a strong torso and skill develop in as many different environments as possible and challenge your motor learning, I'm in. And so this gave me the freedom to use the research to really help underpin everything I was doing with my clients, which needed to start with my assessment. But right now, do you remember I'm injured? So I wanted to find out how I could prevent an injury. And I had been told that if I spotted good posture and bad posture, I could prevent an injury. I had been told that if I worked on muscular dysfunction, I could prevent an injury. But when I looked at the research and removed that bias, so previously I'd been saying, what's the best posture to prevent an injury? But if I just asked, how do you prevent an injury, it never came back to any of those things. In fact, it was really simple. The ways that you could predict an injury were: 1, big flag. If you've ever had an ACL injury, guess what? You're more likely to rehab an ACL injury. So if you've had an injury, that is a big red flag to getting another injury. So on my form, when I've asked my clients, have they had any previous injuries? Easy, bosh, I know that before I even see them move. The next way of predicting an injury is if you don't have the skill to perform the movement at pace with the correct intensity or the correct load at the correct speed in different environments. So in other words, volume, too much too soon. So the research was telling me if you did too much too soon, you didn't have enough skill to perform the movement at pace or under load in the environment. So that meant I basically needed to get my client moving in as many environments as possible with different loads, different intensities. And when I look back at my own injury, that's exactly what I was doing. I went from doing nothing and for a good 2-3 months when I was spending time with my dad to go straight back in to all the running that I used to do before without that lead-up period. And so I got myself an overused injury. It was diagnosed as plantar fasciitis. Has anybody had that? Yes. Do you know, we could have all had it, but we were just the unfortunate ones that felt it. And that was really annoying, because now I understood pain, and I understood that when I read the research, we could all have plantar fasciitis, but we don't all know it, because our brain may not perceive that to be a danger. But for some reason, it did. And so in the old biomechanical head of mine, it would have been purely due to my gait. Yet, the research on gait and plantar fasciitis was a minimal. It was like hardly anything to do with it. Yet, just going through a massive emotional journey had a massive input, I'm sure, to the pain that I felt. So, with that information, I had plantar fasciitis. I knew that I needed to go and research it, and I needed to find out what I could do. And yes, I'd had it before. I'd had it about 10 years before, so there we go. That was another red flag that I was going to get it again. But the last time I got it, guess what I did? I did everything I was told to do. I taped it, I stuck needles in it, I did all the dry needling, I did rolling it on a ball, which was no longer good because I now needed a spiker ball, and then I progressed to the ball that had Lego chunks on the top as well, and electrics, to try and get my foot. I did all of those things. I got so strong, I had a six-pack, I was lifting PBs, but I was still angry and miserable because I couldn't run because of the pain in my foot. So this time I thought, I'm not going down that road anymore, I'm going to look at the research. And what I found out was that, yes, you could stretch the soleus, but that had minimal effect. But actually stretching the big toe, the metatarsal, was good. Didn't mention anything else, not really. It did say if you had 5% more eversion in your calcaneus, that could affect the activation of your glute, if you could work out what 5% difference was from normal, because I'm certainly not a normal person. So I've got no idea what normality is and how I would measure that actual 5%. And the paper was only one paper, and one thing I learned was that I couldn't take the evidence from one paper alone. I needed to research hundreds of papers and get a balance of what those papers said. So in the balance of everything that was said, it didn't look like it had much to do with my gait that I've been managing to do for 46 years absolutely fine. It seemed to have more to do with other aspects that were going on in my life. And so what I needed to do, the biggest thing I needed to do was learn how to pain manage. And so that sent me on another funnel of my research. And what I discovered I needed to do was re-expose myself to movement in that way that I mentioned, so become more skillful in different environments, in different speeds. And this brings me finally to the assessment. It seems to have been a long way around, but I wanted to give you that background of why I decided to change the process that I use, because I wanted to move away from the techniques that had been governing the way I trained. And so I developed a process. And this process is something that we use at Faster, and it starts off with our why, so,